So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. All right, so we've been looking at soul as life, really looking at that whole tone of soul in the Word as the Christ, to see the infinite reproducibility of the idea. And we see that soul shows us that there must be a minimum of 5 subtones here in the third day, because soul cannot help but to be life. Soul is that which maintains the identity, preserves the identity, reproduces the identity. And when there is no interruption in that, no end to that, this is the immortality of soul. So soul is life. For soul to be soul, it must be life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that brings us to the second record, soul as life. What do we see? That the qualities of physical sense cannot bring forth a new creation. You hear the opposite. And so we had the Lord God Jehovah bringing to Adam every beast of the field and every fowl of the air. And now Adam gives names to them. And Adam gave names to all cattle and to the fowl of the air and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found an helpmeet for him. So actually what happens is that the Lord God Jehovah ran out. I've run out. I have nothing else to bring you. I have nothing else to offer you. And you hear that it came to an end. It didn't have that quality of the infinite withinness of soul that is inherent in the true creation, in a true creative principle, in a consciousness that is grounded in mind, spirit, and soul. In that true consciousness, we never run out of the identity. The identity just reproduces and reproduces itself infinitely. But here, there was nothing else to bring Adam, and as though God would say, that's it. That's all I have. That's all you get. There's no new creation, and your satisfaction is still not found in your physical senses. So no helpmeet is found, no new creation. And man was, as Mrs. Eddy says, then ordered to create man anew in partnership with God. And so another means, another method had to be devised to bring forth that helpmeet. There was no helpmeet in animal qualities. It's the opposite of the infinite withinness of soul, the capacity of soul, the infinite gender of soul. And that the 5 physical senses, the corporeal senses, the bodily senses,
fail to bring satisfaction. That need, you see, just feeds on itself. You still get a counterfeit sense of the Word as the Christ, or actually it's the Word as the Christ, causing that need within us to grow and feed on itself, and we feel it's a greater need and a greater need. It makes us more and more desperate, more and more empty. And this is success, because the uncomfortableness of that course, of having deviated from the course of the true record of creation, the true line of creation, will send us back to that true line, will send us searching, It always sends us searching. This is a cybernetic movement. It's how the homeoraison, the homeostasis work together to use the situation to the benefit of that homeoraisa, which has set the divine goal. Divine love has set the divine goal and the course to the goal, and whatever deviates from that is just made more and more uncomfortable until the course is corrected within us. Yeah. And that we return to the absolutely ideal, maximal course of action. So looking outside of ourselves never brings forth anything satisfactory. Has anyone here ever learned that lesson? Ever had an experience that would verify that? Yeah. There is no helpmeet outside. And just as soon as we stop looking for it outside, as soon as we stop looking for our fulfillment, our satisfaction outside, and begin to experience our inner wholeness, our inner completeness, our infinite gender, then it may very well be that we find someone who has also found their inner completeness, and we can share our completeness with each other. But trying to put two halves together never works. Yeah. What? Living examples? Yeah. Well, just to show how practical these things are, you know. So we come to the fourth day of creation, to principle. And this will have all to do, really, with the answering the question about these identities of soul. These self-complete identities, these self-reproducing identities, are they each and all doing their own thing? On their own, working in their own separate spheres, moving in their own separate universe of expression? Are they isolated spheres? Do they have an orbit of their own? You see, this really is the leading question, or is a part of the leading question. If they are moving in an orbit of their own, are they in conflict with each other then? See? Principle says they all belong to me. They are my identities. So soul identifies every idea with principle, with a single principle, with one principle, not with a person, not with personal hopes and ambitions and goals that have been set by our best sense, the human highest sense, but soul sense really sets the goal that every identity move in its principle and consequently be related harmoniously to each other, putting them into relationship with each other. That's what we will see, what we see in the fourth day. That principle is not to be found in fragmentary ideas. So the epitome, the main tone for that fourth day is that principle unites all identities into a system of ideas. You hear how the holism is always present? The holism, no matter where you go in that descent that we have made from science itself to divine science to absolute Christian science, now to Christian science, and all the way through that word order, that creative order, we never leave the sense of wholeness. We come right out from wholeness and move within wholeness to the point of fulfilled wholeness. So principle unites, you see. All ideas are united. All identities are united into a system of ideas. And as mind, then, what do we see? That divine metaphysics is based on a system of ideas. A system of ideas is the system of divine metaphysics. Now we will see how the fourth day, considering the word as the Christ, which is a tone that continues with us as we go into the fourth day, how is that borne out by the fourth day? The fourth day now will turn back again to the primal creative elements, and it turns back especially to the first day. If you know John Dorley's Volume 1, you know that he repeats many times. He will say, now the fourth day builds on the first day. The fifth day builds on the second day. And the sixth day builds on the third day. You remember that? Now you know it. That the fourth day turns back on the first. It takes the light of the first day and begins to see the abundant translation of that light. Yes, that's just the perfect way to say it, I think, the abundant translation of it. And so subdivides that light and classifies that light and shows the self-government that is inherent in the light of mind. So let us begin and take principle as mind. And the text there is, and God said, let there be lights. You hear that? The light has been already differentiated. The light is being translated abundantly. The light becomes lights in the firmament of heaven. There you have a touch of the second day. To divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Again, we have nothing negative here. The sense of night is not negative. It's only when it is translated, when we draw the conclusions at a further level of conscious experience, that we perhaps would say, well, if there's a night, an experience of night, an experience of darkness, how these things relate to that, how they are translated to that. But not in the first record is it anything negative. So we have as the main symbolism, the overall symbolism of the fourth day, the celestial universe. These are the symbols that are taken, the heavenly bodies in relationship to each other. And so we have the sun, the moon, and the stars, not in a linear fashion, but given what principle alone can give to any symbol, to any value, namely relationship, scientific relationship. So the sun, the moon, and the stars are in a non-linear relationship, in a dynamic relationship, as a symbol for the government of principle, of how principle governs, of what principle's system is like. And so we get system here, relationship, we said, organization, what kind of organization, principles organization, divine self-organization. And the first day is overformed by the fourth day. And it says there, and let them be, let these lights now be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Wonderful thing. Let them be for all of those things. We have the classification of light. You see, this is principle. The classifying of light. A system of light. And so let them be for signs. You might say, well, that means that let all of these things be for symbols, and we know that they are for symbols. But something very beautiful that you find in this symbol of the celestial universe, and something that you find in what we could call the true sense of astrology. Would you know that the first astrology, that in the ancient astrology, there was a pure and true sense of these symbols, that they picked up a spiritual sense of the symbols, that these symbols, the symbols of the universe, which became the astrological values, were, they say, depicting a Messiah picture. It's a Messiah picture. Here we are in the word as what? Christ. Yes, and we're at the point of principle is mine. I'm thinking of that reference of Mrs. Eddy's works on metaphysics. What? Leave the grand point untouched, right? They never crowned the power of mind as the Messiah. Yeah. So we're really looking at an illustration of principle as mind, that power of mind, that Christ power at work. And when it says for signs, you know that belonging to that whole sense of a right view of the universe, even astrologically, are the 12 signs of the zodiac, of the true zodiac. What do you have when you have 12?
Demonstration.
This is the demonstration of principle. So to say, let the whole thing begin with the fact that principle is demonstrating itself. Nothing else is demonstrating itself. Let them be for signs. And so apparently, I guess 12 constellations, 12 main constellations became the basis, thank you. Basis, yes, the foundation of that true zodiac as a symbol for the 12-fold demonstration of principle. A symbol, when we say principle demonstrates itself, or we speak of the demonstrating power of principle, the spiritual power of principle. You remember the third, I just have you all over the place, don't I? That third degree is what? Wisdom, purity, spiritual understanding, which is tracing those days of creation, the first day of wisdom, the second day of purity, the third day of spiritual understanding, and the fourth day, spiritual power. This is the demonstrating power of principle. And so this is a beautiful sense of those signs. Let the lights be for signs. Apparently there are more than 12 constellations, but that the other constellations serve the 12 or are subordinated to. There's a further subclassification and sub-subclassification. Is that right? Oh, I got it right. And all bringing out this system now of principle, the system of the light of mind. Yes. And let them be for seasons. Isn't that clear? How many seasons do we have? 4. So you have first the 12 and then the 4. The Companion Bible says this actually means cycles, or is referring to cycles. Actually, every one of these has a cyclical sense to it. Those 12 have a cyclical sense. The 4 have a cyclical sense. Those 4 seasons really indicating the rhythm of spirit, the calculus of spirit, and the operational sense of the 4, principle operating through its 4-fold calculus. And hinting toward really the principle as omni-active, the activity of that principle, the movement of that principle. And you hear mind, 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 principle as mind. The operation of principle. So it's one great classification of these symbols or of ideas, and we need to see this is the light within us, and this is what must evolve within us. That light within us has to evolve into a whole universe of light, a system of light, a science of light, into the light of divine metaphysics. So principle puts that light into the framework of a system. And the movement is implied there, that light is governing. It's a great cybernetic sense, of course, that comes with it. That principle is mind. And when the light of mind is put into a system, it begins to dictate everything, to govern everything, to govern all the motions and actions of a being. And let them be for days. So we have the 7 days, again another cycle, because we know that those 7 are not linear, they are cybernetic. They never come to an end. They are always spiraling and leading us to a further and further standpoint from which to begin again. So these cycles of the 4, cycles of the 12 and the 4, are bringing out the days, bringing out days and years. So what do we mean by years? Everything going back to the one, being brought back to the one, and meaning the eternality of that principle of being, the infinitude of that principle. So the oneness of that principle is always resolved back to the eternality of the infinite one. Eternity, Mrs. Eddy says under year in the glossary, eternity is God's measurement of soul-filled years. So in the first day, the light of the first day and the light of the fourth day are the same in one way. They're the same light, but they are different because the light of the fourth day is structured. The light of the first day is not yet structured in the way that principle can structure it. Now it is structured and organized. It has organized itself through mind, spirit, and soul, been organized by the nature of God as the creative principle, now into classifications, into a metaphysical system, a system of metaphysics. And we are given really the realm of the calculation of the Word as the Christ. Everything within this realm is calculating. Everything is working and bringing out the abundant translation of the idea, of principle's idea. Isn't that right? Isn't that principle's idea? And that principle is one with its idea. That wherever the idea is, the principle is. That the idea is found in its principle. I just go right back to the compendium on principle and take all those headings that at first seem remote, and we learn them, we memorize them, we have them on a list, we carry that list around for perhaps years. We devote ourselves to nurturing those values, and suddenly they leap into life. Here it is, you see, that principle and its idea is one. That the idea is found in its principle. That wherever the idea is, the principle is. There's just no separation. Principle and idea are inseparable, you see. They're really indivisible. And here we see the inseparability because we see the variety of that idea. We see the system of that idea. And this is the realm now which the Christ, the Word as the Christ is calculating, is bringing forth. And it is a realm then of the eternal values or ideas with which to calculate infinitely. Beautiful symbol for the harmony of principle. So principle as mind says, let there be a system of metaphysics. Let there be a system of ideas. These are the lights. Do you like that? I love it. And what does that uncover as unreal? What does that uncover? The unreality of the second record. Principle generally is epitomized as the following, that animal magnetism disrupts the relation of God and man. And principle as mind, animal magnetism operates on the basis of isolated beliefs. See, you hear the difference? It's not a system. It's, what is the basis of animal magnetism? Isolated beliefs, thereby breaking up the system of man, would try to break up the system of man. And so we have that system versus the disruption of unity here. And the second record says, and the Lord God, Jehovah, Yahweh, caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. Not the light of mind. At a deep sleep, a sleep of mortal mind. Not a mind, not a conscious awareness, not a knowing filled with the light, the structured light of mind. At a deep sleep, and he slept. And he, the Lord God Jehovah, took, now something is being taken out of something else, took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. So you have something being taken out. It's a fragment of, isn't it? So those ribs really are a kind of the first faint appearing of the fact that man is a system. And we find this beautifully in the chapter Recapitulation. You remember how Mrs. Eddy gives in Recapitulation those 24 questions and answers, and called it the science of man, really, didn't she? Mm-hmm. The science of man. And she said in her preface to the chapter that it elucidates scientific metaphysics. What are we looking at? Scientific metaphysics in the fourth day. See? So you have really the first faint appearing with these ribs, and yet it's the attempt to take just one fragment of those 24 to disrupt that unity in order to find the answer to man's wholeness and self-satisfaction. And so you have the countering of the metaphysical system of principle as mind versus a physical system. And it says, and closed up the flesh instead thereof, versus the infinite openness of principle's system. And that system of the fourth day is infinitely open. It is the true closed system with infinite openness within it, that fourth day. And here you have the opening up and the closing up of the flesh instead thereof. So I think that's very, very clear. We have the deep sleep, the hypnotic state of Adam, the sense of mesmerism, of being mesmerized. He's mesmerized by his problem. He's mesmerized by this this craving sense of the senses, and it becomes hypnotic. The marginal heading is hypnotic surgery. Surgical operation, she says. We have an operation going on, but it isn't the operation of principle, is it? It's an operation of cutting something away, of excising, incising and excising something, cutting something away. And this is so totally against what the fourth day teaches us, that everything must be left in its principle. Right? Everything must be seen within its principle. If you see something in that system and you think, oh, that's it, that's what I want, I'll go in and I'll take that out. As though we can take it out of the context of the whole. That I'll take the synonymous term life, because I want to have a better sense of life, a richer sense of life, more abundance, more supply, more demonstration of what makes up life, so I'm going to take life. And we do this in the beginning. It's all right. It's all right in the beginning. Okay. But the divine system is going to teach us, is going to instruct us. You have to leave life in the whole of the system. You have to leave any category, or if you take a part of a category, to take life is to take a part of a category. So we say, okay, then I'll take the whole category. And principle says, you have to leave that category in relationship to the other categories. See, right? You have to see every so-called part in its wholeness. Leave it in the whole. It is the whole. It's an accentuation, an aspect of the whole that must relate to every other accentuation and aspect of the whole in order for it to be what it is. Right? Yeah, this is true. This is the undisruptibility of the system. And that was what Adam had to learn, what we have to learn. And what we do learn through our experiences. Through our experiences, we learn, we grow, we evolve, we mature, we become scientists. In a way, Adam was the first scientist. We said everyone is a scientist because everyone has a hypothesis about what is real, what is reality. And so he had a hypothesis, and it was being corrected all the time, that hypothesis. Being lifted up, being raised, until the false hypothesis went out altogether. That's what we see in the second record. So every stage along the way is so meaningful to us, isn't it? Because we see really our own evolution. Yeah, we see our own evolution. That we see that we learn, and we learn to learn that we can't break up the system. That's principle. Isn't that? And that's success. Huh? That's the success. We're accompanied by that success all along the way. So we come to principle as spirit. The system of ideas reflects itself. Let's get that right. It's principle as spirit. The system of ideas reflects itself in understanding and demonstration. And it says, and let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven. These signs and seasons and days and years now are lights in the firmament, and they are in the firmament of heaven to do something, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And we have to realize that the earth is not outside of that system, that it is within that system. It is a symbol for a certain level, a further level. We have here really the coming into awareness of there being a relationship now of levels, of the absolute to the relative, of the divine to the human is implied. That's implied, the human is implied. It's the absolute to the relative. The new information here is that these lights give light to the earth. It's a translation sense. Word is Christ, right? From heaven to earth. So the system of metaphysics is ruling. It's ruling in various realms, in all the different realms. It's ruling in the realm of the absolute. It also rules in the realm of the relative. We get a relationship of government. The greater, and we will see, ruling the lesser. And You know, I have a little note here. I'll read it to you. Only if there is light in the absolute can there be light in the relative. Only as we are enlightened with these categories of the absolute sense of science can we ever understand our relative experience. See? It's an understanding, you see. The system of ideas reflects itself in understanding and demonstration. This is where understanding and demonstration come from, how we experience them consciously. Truth and love, Mrs. Eddy says, enlighten the understanding. Enlighten the understanding. In whose light shall we see light? And that's just what we said. In whose light? In their light, in the light of truth and love, in the light of the absolute, the light of the relative is seen. Again, you get a feeling of like producing like, don't you? Which is word as Christ in the calculus. And that this light, he says, is this system of divine light. This light is reflected by all who walk in the light. That's the staying on that course, on that way that has been set by the homeoraisa and the homeostasis, that way of those days of creation. You see, that's the way of life, isn't it? The word order always presents us with the way of life. So that this light is reflected, the light of truth and love is reflected by all who walk in the light, by all who turn away from a false material sense. A little hint of the positive feedback and the negative feedback, how to keep those two in balance. Walk in the light, turn away from a false material sense. You see that? Then you don't need to be corrected. You're on the course. Yeah. And that this is obedience to principle. So obedience to principle is really spiritual reflection within us. And it shows the impact to every level, that there's an impact at every level. And the second record will show us there's an impact even at the level of belief. And this is the abundant translation of the word as the Christ. So what is going on in that second record? Principle as spirit. The operation of animal magnetism brings forth material fruits. And the rib which the Lord God Jehovah had taken from man, made he a woman and brought her to the man. So something has been taken from within to taken outside, and now it's being brought back to that from which it has been taken, but it remains outside. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones, like producing like, and flesh of my flesh, like producing like." Counterfeit of the word as the Christ, taken from within him, but then taken outside. This is the counterfeit of the word as the Christ. And she shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Versus that inseparability of God and man, principle and idea, that we had in the first record. So you get a distorted sense of self-reproduction here. Again, Mrs. Eddy refers to it as mental midwifery. Midwifery, what does that remind you of? A birth, the first sense of birth, the first sense of obstetrics, an operation. It's a surgery. Again, it's not the operation of principle, or is it? Perhaps the first faint appearing of the true sense of birth, of our true origin, that we would be led out of this limited concept into a higher concept. And actually, she indicates that. She says that this surgery was first performed mentally, that later there was a change of the modus operandi, that man should be born of woman, not woman taken from man. It's the first system of suggestive obstetrics, and she says it has changed. It has changed. She says another change will come. What can you hear? Can you hear the translatability, the retranslation process going on? Another change will come as to the nature and origin of man, and this revelation will destroy the dream of existence, reinstate reality, usher in science and the glorious fact of creation. Wow. That both man and woman proceed from God and are His eternal children, belonging to no lesser parent. Wow, that's a complete retranslation, huh? Yeah. Yes, taken back to the Father, Mother, God. That principle is the Father, Mother, God. That we come from the Father, Mother, God. That we are born of that principle. Now, that's so terrific. And so we see that we cannot disrupt the system. Actually, we cannot disrupt the system, even if we seem to disrupt the system. We can't disrupt the system. Even if we have a limited sense of the system is never limited. The system is never less than the divine system. And that divine system is working on us and working on us through the system to awaken us in the likeness of the system. And this is success. Yeah. So we come to principle as soul. Find my order here. In divine metaphysics, now the soul tone comes in full blown, that the greater rules the lesser, thereby bringing out harmony. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Nothing negative here. Yeah. But you hear a ruling. What synonymous term is this? What a good synonym class this is, huh? Are you being stretched?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel stretched. I like it. And the ruling, the greater ruling the lesser, what synonymous term is this? This is soul too. Yes, this is soul. And you hear the touch of principle in it, the ruling, the governing by that system of light. Again, falling back on the first day, because God called the light day and the darkness he called night in the first day. And now we have the ruling of the day and the night by these two great lights. We have more definition coming into that question of the lights. The lights are defined, the greater light, the lesser light, the stars. He made the stars also. Those marvelous stars. Talk about those in a minute. And they all rule. Each rules in its own realm. So you have really system within system. Systems within systems. More diversification, more classification. Categories of light here. All belonging to the self-operation and the self-organization of principle. Light ruling light, greater controlling lesser. Everything having its place value. Don't you love those lights? He made the stars also. Oh gosh, you know it's. Can't you just hear that Christ translation? Huh? From the greater light to the lesser light to the stars. What does the Christ order do? What does the law of truth, life, and love do? It translates. Yeah, it translates from principle to idea. What are those stars? They are the ideas, aren't they? They are the specific individual lights, the specific individual ideas, so that we can have that specific light that we need from the system, that the system contains and holds within itself that specific light that you need, whatever it is that you need. These are the stars. Yeah. So let's see if we can recap at this point. Principle as mind would say, let there be a divine system of metaphysics. The light of principle. Principle as spirit would say, and let it translate itself, present itself to every level of understanding. Come to every level of understanding. Translation. It enlightens the understanding. You see, it's where the structure of understanding and the structure of being are the same, where there's that isomorphy between principle and idea. And if that is understood, if that divine system, that light is understood, it begins to rule in all realms. It rules in every realm. Principle as soul, yes. You get reflection. You get ruling. And if it is the system that is present in all realms, at all levels of understanding, see, it is ruling, governing those realms, and this is principle as soul. It's exactly really what we see. We have a good example of this in our study when we take the dimensional sense of the synonyms. Remember that dimensional sense of the 7 synonymous terms and their ideas? What do we find there? All levels of understanding. Do we not? From divine science, or from science itself to divine science to absolute Christian science. And then Christian science, and within Christian science. You have the standpoint of how it comes to the human, how that synonymous term comes to the human, how it works in the human, operates in the human to change the human. You have what is lifted up in the human, the new attitude within the human. And finally you see what it looks like when it's not understood. You see, when it's not understood. You have really the whole range of understanding, don't you? Levels, all the levels of understanding are there. And you have really the light of that synonymous term ruling. You have it governing. You have it translating itself to every level. Then the greater controls the lesser. Yeah. All right, so we will stop at that point, and this afternoon we will see what that is dealing with in the second record of creation and go on from there.